Hey guys, it's Adawgz and welcome to my channel. So today I will be doing a tier list video. Everything that I say is solely based on my opinion, so if you do not agree with it, that is okay. Just take this tier list with a grain of salt. The way I define which ride lane goes in which tier list is we first look at what I believe are the 4 best decks. So the 4 best decks being Youthberg, Ava, Sarah Snow, and Kyrie. So I believe all 4 of them are very strong, just very consistent, can hit fairly good numbers, and they don't really require to do much to really put on pressure the opponent, because of how consistent the decks are. So all these decks are included with the promo. So with that out of the way, I'll go over Youthberg first. So the reason why Youthberg is really strong, especially in set 7, is it does have access to Youthberg Tempest. It's essentially a draw 2, especially when you go on first against the opponent, and giving 5k to the front row, so it can help make magic numbers. You combine that with the grade 1 that can also give your Vanguard an extra drive check. Is very strong too, since most of your rebel forms don't get any drive checks. So essentially being able to draw 2 and also get an extra drive check is very silly. That grade 1's also very solid with Gust as well if going second. I feel like the deck feels kind of complete, the best way to put it. It has a lot of good searching power and stuff as well, so that's why I've put Youthberg as a very powerful deck. Again, all the decks aren't in any order, just in those kind of like lists. Next we have Ava. So Ava is definitely very, how do I say, very consistent, being able to search for your orders. So especially the promo, which gives your Adawgz resist, and you can also put the order into the drop, I believe, of the soul. I think I put the soul to counter charge and then adding Adawgz from your drop to your hand. And the fact that you're able to search these promos, the promo orders from your ride line, is very silly. So it's just that one promo is definitely give Ava a very strong consistency boost. And again, also being able to do multi-attacks as well is also very strong as well. It's fairly tanky with the Adawgz being like intercepts as well, and instead of being able to salvage it with the order 2. And it just overall makes really strong numbers, especially when you get to your persona ride turns. The Adawgz can come out in crits too, so sometimes you may not even be able to take the Adawgz. And then even just the filtering power, some of the research orders they have too, and even with Ava as well, being able to look up a certain amount of cards and add a card to hand and put the rest on bottom. So it has a lot going for it, so that's why I think it's also a very powerful deck. Next we go with Sarah Snow. So Sarah Snow is just really good at just pretty much prisoning the field, forcing your opponent to use resources and stuff as well. When you get to Sarah Snow before Pure Light, you generally have triple drive, and then when you get to Pure Light, as long as you keep riding, they generally just keep ripping apart the opponent's hand, slowly making more advantage, and eventually just giving the front row crit. And at that stage, when it gets to that point, most of the time, it's very hard to compete against a Pure Light turn that always has constant crit to the front row. So it's definitely very, very strong. And then lastly we have Kyrie. Kyrie is just very consistent, really good at finding the grade 4 because of the amount of draw power and other things going for it too. It has the grade 1 allows you to like rid the top card of your deck and stuff too, put on top and bottom. And yeah, it's just once you get to the Kyrie, you just make such a big hand. You've got triple drive, you get multi attacks. The multi attacks as well don't require too much resources as well. It's just a really well-oiled machine. So these are the meta, the 4 decks you're trying to beat. So both the very solid and strong, I think, are very close to each other in power. I just think the very solid just have like a little bit of an edge over the other ones. So first of all, we will go with the very solid category. So the reason why these cards are very solid, they are quite fast. They can take advantage definitely of the turns where these the powerful decks need to kind of start rolling. They can kind of really take advantage of that spot pretty much. So with Gravidia, for example, so Gravidia, you can play it fairly as slow kind of or fast as possible. Again, you can generally do a 5 meteor turn when you hit grade 3, and again, if the opponent's on 2 damage, for example, and you've milled the 5 getting 1 crit, they don't have a PG, it's absolutely devastating, because if you don't have a PG, you're forced to guard quite a lot. And even if the Gravidia plays a little bit of a slow game, the deck can just fail so much as long as you keep getting Persona rides, that you can potentially just have a deck full of triggers if it gets to that state. So definitely a very strong deck. Combined also, obviously, with combined Russian and Spore, definitely helping the deck out a lot, being able to make big Rigo columns, so usually on Persona rides about 30, when it's not 20 is fine as well. But yeah, just overall very strong, and even with the early game, if you run the Orphis ride line, being able to rush hard very quickly, so that's why I think Gritty is very solid. Next we have Letitia. So Letitia is very consistent, being able to, I think when you have 3 or 4 orders, you just kind of just restand, you get draw power on the deck. There's kind of getting a triple drive every turn. You have a couple of grade 2s, I believe, as well, that their power scales depending on how many orders you have installed as well, so you can hit very big numbers very quickly too. You have Yoika, which has power and then also can bounce regards back to hand, so you can kind of rush and then bounce maybe key cards you want to use next turn. So the deck definitely has a lot going for it. It's definitely very strong. Yeah, so that is why it's also very solid. Now with Flagberg is can be a very fast deck. Just essentially when you get to that 5 the 5 attack count, you get to draw a card, you get to retire 2 of the opponent's cards, and then you also have the guard con on top, being able to have to guard with 3 cards at once. So depending how well the Flagberg player opens as well, though the shelling cannon and then everything as well, they can do quite a lot of attacks. And I think over time, maybe even just a couple of turns of having so many attacks with the guard con and everything as well, it starts to get very scary, and it can honestly just generally sweep any of these powerful decks out very quickly straight off the bat if they aren't careful. So that's why I put Flagberg in very solid. Next we have Mahanavana. So Mahanavana is definitely a deck that feels complete. It has Arcs to draw power, it has Esbradia for multi-attacks, you have Mahanavana itself to be able to deal damage, you have Amelia, which allows you to essentially do a double Mahanavana, being able to ping 2 damage if needed. And then obviously again, just having triple drive is very, very good. You dig for your deck much quicker. So overall, Mahanavana has, again, a lot of stuff going for it too, so that's why it's definitely a very solid deck. Next we have Asakura Yo. This is one of those decks where even if you don't get Persona Ride, you can still do some very good shenanigans. So using Chocolove, being able to know what's in your opponent's hand, so you can know whether you should commit next turn, rush hard, definitely very strong. And then also combined with Anna, being able to stand your Asakura Yo if it doesn't hit, and then Ascurio getting a crit if you're on full damage by counterblasting 1. It's very, very fast, extremely fast, and since some of the powerful decks do need a little bit to set up, pretty much, need to get the Persona Ride to really get some like strong maximum effect, Ascurio can take advantage of that and absolutely just destroy them. It can also destroy a lot of the decks below them too. Same with all the other full decks, I forgot to say as well. They can definitely take out the competition down below as well. I'm not saying it won't be easy, it definitely will be tricky as well, especially with the strong decks too, which we'll get soon. They are very, very, very good as well, as I said, so definitely don't diss them or like bat an eye to them, because they're also very strong too. And then lastly we have Adawgz. So Adawgz just being able to change the opponent's power to 1 is very strong, especially if you're versing someone who's really lucky. You can generally just nullify all those triggers that they've done, especially when you have, I think it's Rock Augur, where you can just swing all those first, they swing for 20k, then you can swing with your Vanguard, make their power go to 1, and then Standing Rock Augurs, you have 5 attacks, very strong attacks. And also getting a crit as well makes it very scary too, because you now they're taking the core, depending how much damage you've taken early on. If you don't have a PG for that, kind of like Gridiot, you could potentially be in a very bad spot. So Adawgz definitely very strong. Those Rock Augurs definitely put in a lot of work. You can definitely get 4 different cards in Soul fairly easily in set 7 too. You have quite a few cards that can guarantee you to get the 4 different cards, especially for Persona Ride as well, because you have a grade 3 guaranteed in the Soul then too. Yeah, that cat, can't remember its name, but yeah, definitely helps make the deck consistent, and all the other cards go on for it too. I think it has ways of retiring and stuff too. Just very strong. It can, you know, do all this again when it hits grade 3. So very fast, very strong. So yeah, overall, Adawgz just definitely a very solid deck. Now for the strong decks, these decks are obviously very strong as well. They can definitely take down the very solid decks too, if need be, and also the powerful decks. So some of these decks in this category are a couple of kind of like tempo, a little bit tempo, but they are fairly tanky, I will say. And then we also have kind of like rest of the strong aggro decks too. So, for example, all the aggro decks, or like kind of tempo-based decks we have is like the Orphis Regus, we've got Bruce, grade 3 Bruce specifically, we have Barrow Magnus, we've got both the Augurs, Eugene, Michu, Tamayura, PBO, Bastion, Thegria, Magnolia, and Lorenorel. So, with Orphis Regus, it's can be a very fast deck. It can aggro straight from grade 2 and then continue onwards. As long as you keep getting your Persona Rides and stuff as well, you always keep constantly playing more orders, keep calling more Shadow Army tokens, and you can just bash pace very quickly. They can hit very, very big numbers very quickly as well, so they become very scary very fast. It does kind of feel a bit fragile, especially since you're going really, really hard. But if you swing hard enough and the opponent isn't lucky enough to get in defensives and stuff, this deck can put you in a very bad spot very quickly. Now with grade 3 Bruce, so it definitely got a really good buff in set 7. It now does have a couple of cards that you can kind of do a couple of multi-attacks before you hit Final Rush. Actually no, I think it might only do 3 attacks still, but it can get some multi-attacks, it can get some solid attacks off before Final Rush. It was kind of one of the problems that Bruce kind of did have, where you'd have to kind of hold on a little bit until the Final Rush and then push. Now even before then, Bruce was very strong, but the support they gave for Bruce in this set definitely helps the deck a lot. Especially when you get the Persona Ride and Final Rush, like, you can just really kill the opponent straight off the bat on Persona Ride with Bruce, if you have the cards except for Final Rush, because you're playing Grade 3 Bruce as well. You have access to Leonard, which is absolutely silly. If you still run Derek's very strong as well, being able to do essentially a bit of a field wipe. You can use other orders like, for example, Whole Blast Full Dive or like Pandemonium Tactics, just giving extra power to the front row as well. And then getting those solid multi-attacks off as well makes the deck very scary, so you have to be very careful against Bruce as well. It's kind of like a ticking time bomb. If you're not careful enough and you don't rush them hard enough and kill them quick enough, and they have the right key pieces, they can blow you straight out of the water. So it's definitely a deck you need to be careful of as well. Adawgz. So Adawgz has gotten quite a bit of support now. It now has the Grade 1 Doll that increases your soul charge count by 1 when you use any abilities of soul charge. It can consistently get to 15 soul, I reckon, now, honestly, with set 7. So, and then once it again hits 15 soul, it has a field wipe, inbuilt in it. It has multi-attacks. It has a crit, and you're able to draw cards and stuff as well. This deck can do all this as well if going first too, so it can really just wreck face very fast, very quickly. It's definitely a deck to be careful of. It does feel a bit fragile, especially when you get to 15 soul if you have to commit a lot of cards to get there. But if you again go hard enough with Adawgz when you go on first, sometimes even the opponent does get to Grade 3, they might not even have a hand to kind of like fight back with, and that does happen when he goes if Persona Ride, if you get there, or maybe not even Persona Ride. If you get another turn, you can generally probably just finish the game off. So Barrow is definitely very strong because of that. Again, the field wipe, multi-attacks, crit, very, very strong. Next for the Adawgz. So I put them both in the same kind of spot. I feel like they're both good in their own way, but they're both fairly fast because of the roaming prison dragons. So in case you don't know what the roaming prison dragon does, its skill is when you play an order, you can give it either 10k or a crit, but if you alchemy magic an order, you get both. So because of that, if you open well in the early game, you can actually have dragons on the field all the way from Grade 1 going second, or you can have the dragons going from Grade 2 if going first. And I'll tell you, once those dragons on the field, and when you get to like 3 or 4 damage, and Adawgz just again consistently personalize every turn because it's able to do that because of Shadow Cloak, being able to bounce your persona back to hand if you call it out for an order and stuff like that. It gets very scary very quickly. As I said, it's swinging for 25 if you combo Miasma with Adawgz, and if it has a boost behind it like the Headhunters, it can swing for 38, and then on Persona Ride turns it hits 48. And again, the opponent's the Adawgz player is always probably going to be consistently Persona Riding, so you're going to have to deal with a Vanguard that could potentially have triple drive, use a triple drive order, and you're going to have to deal with dragons that have very high power with an extra crit. And in a lot of scenarios, sometimes you just have to take the Vanguard because it doesn't have a crit, and you have to hope they don't drive check a crit, because most of the time that can happen where you're on 4 and you're forced to take the Vanguard so you can kind of guard the rear guards, and the Adawgz player reveals a crit, so you just die. So Adawgz is definitely very strong, very nutty. It's a deck you have to be very careful of too. It can, I think, just like kind of all these kind of strong and solid decks, just gonna be very careful because they can 180 you very quickly, and sometimes you might have known what just happened, and you just get blown straight out the water. So with Eugene, Eugene was honestly a meme in set 1, but as more the sets have come out, Eugene's actually started to get a bit more solid. It has more ways of retiring much quicker. You have Best Harvest going for it as well, being able to kind of break even with when you recall certain cards or retire stuff. You also do have the grade 1 that can stand your Vanguard, so now you have multi-attacks in the deck, which is very, very good too. And overall, the deck can swing very fast, very quickly, straight from grade 1, depending what you open. And then definitely can open, bash face very hard grade 2, and then yeah, again on grade 3, it's definitely very strong. I'm pretty sure it gets 10 or 15k power if you, I think, might rest something or something like that. So it hits a fairly nice magic number, especially if you're going first, opponent's going second. And yeah, again, just good control. It has multi-attacks going for it as well, and just can be very aggressive very quickly. So definitely a very, very solid deck now. It's not as a meme anymore. Next we have Michu. So Michu, definitely when the ball starts rolling, Michu can be a very scary deck. So it has multi-attacks in the form of switching your Nokono with your Michu, being able to get 2 Vanguard attacks, which is very good. You have some really great draw power with the cannonballs, and with all set up being able to rest itself to soul charge 1, and then play a cannonball straight from grade 1 if you open cannonballs and just start drawing. If you have Nokonos in the drop and you play an order, you can call Nokono out as well, so you can sometimes always guarantee a Nokono on your field if it gets retired by any means. And then with the cannonball, just giving 3 units power is very strong too, because you start making some very strong, very big magic numbers quickly. Even if you have to go first, you can just use that 10k buff and free of, both on the, you can use the Vanguard's power buff on itself, and then 2 other units too, or maybe booster and something. And again, it'll hit very, very strong numbers going first. So it still can be scary. And I said you have on hitters as well. If things hit, you can like play, I think, stuff. You can play like an order from your draw, I think, and put it into the order zone or something. So that allows you to get some extra draw power. And just overall, it makes a decent amount of hand. It can be very fast, very quickly, depending how you open to. And it can just be very scary quickly. It also does have an inbuilt like a Regard snipe if needed to get rid of pesky Regards too, so it definitely helps a lot as well. But no, overall Michu is definitely very nice, and I can just see this deck getting much better as more support comes out for it. So next we have Temura. So Temura, especially with the Maiden cards on the Blaze Maiden, you can make very big numbers very fast, and if the opponent is not prepared for it, they can be put to very high damage very quickly, because what their maidens can do, as long as you have it from maidens, you can counter +1, rest itself, and I think 2 other maidens, and you can give the front row plus 10k until the end of turn, because you give the ability to your Vanguard. So if you open that during grade 2, you already have Regards hitting 20k, and then when you hit the grade 3, if you have Persona right, and then you have Temuru's other effects activated too, you're giving 25k to your front row and having multi-attacks on top, which all the Regards will see when they're called out. So that hits some very fast numbers very quickly. Now, even if you don't run the Maiden stuff, the Temura deck's still very strong too, especially going first. You can still do those multi-attacks too. Again, we're going to call your Rimuri and Remory out. And then you can also just intercept your Rimuri and Remories, put them in the soul. So, yeah, just overall, again, it can be very fast, straight from grade 2 if need be. Even grade 1 if you open the Forktails. And yeah, I said, if you push the opponent into high damage early enough, before they can even really do anything, they can be in a bad spot very quickly. So Temura is definitely very strong, again, doing multi-attacks. And again, yeah, it's just really nice, sorry. Next we have PBO. So PBO's definitely a very strong aggro deck. So it has a multi-X going for it. If you have a Phantom Blast Dragon in your soul, it gains a crit. So your Vanguard is a bit scary. You have Blasted Arc as well, which is very solid too. You can do all these multi-attacks straight from the get-go when you hit grade 3, so the opponent does not have to be on grade 2 to even do it. So it becomes very scary. And again, you have the Blast Arc with Twin Drive from the Ride Line in grade 2. So if you luck out and get triggers, you can push the opponent to high damage count quickly too. So that's nice going for it too. But just overall, it's just a very strong aggro deck, and it's definitely a deck to be careful of. Next we have like a couple of the kind of like tempo decks, but they're kind of like tanky. So you have the Bastion, I think, which got support. I think it was a grade 3. I think it's like a 15k shield or something, but I think it like intercept from the back row or something like that. It kind of just helps you get to your Bastion Prime turns, and usually when you get the Bastion Prime turns, you're hitting very, very massive numbers where if you don't have PGs for it, you might just potentially just die, especially if you're lucky enough to get the overtrigger. If you hit the overtrigger, it's absolutely devastating. Again, Bastion Prime, when it swings, if you reveal in grade 3s, you can get rid of Bastion Prime, stand all your reguards, and you get 10k power. So it has some very high power output, very strong damage output too. So if you go first to Bastion as well, if you're lucky enough to open a Dark Strain too, you can hit some very big numbers quickly too, which again can put the opponent in a bad spot, especially again when you get to your prime turns and the opponent's like on 4 damage, for example. They have to again possibly guard the early reguards, like the smaller reguards. So then when they swing with prime, because those reguards will be very powerful, they might be able to take it depending on what their hand is like, because again, prime will shred your hand. It's very a very strong tempo deck. Next we have Thegria. So Thegria's definitely a deck that when it gets to grade 3 and it has a Persona Ride, when it starts rolling, it'll start snowballing. It gets stronger and stronger. It has ways to it has multiple ways of drawing, has ways of consistently always getting grade 3s to Persona Ride every turn, so you can keep that constant pressure up. It has Maple as well, which may allow you to like get certain cards from your soul to hand. So if you can get like PGs in your soul, you can get like PGs to your hand too. Yeah, Maple does a lot for the deck, and again, constantly Persona Riding and Thegria as well. It's very, very strong too. Again, you have multi-attacks on both the Thegrias, one being an extra Vanguard attack, the other one being an extra Reguard attack. If you won stuff like Rafalsos, he is a very strong booster. Again, if you Persona Ride for your Reguards too, so, and again, when those Reguards or like, you know, Vanguard stands, it'll stand as well, so you can create some very big columns. It's kind of just like the Bastion Prime. Once you start break running in Thegria, the snowballing starts to become insane, because you can create a decent amount of hand to actually get to those Persona Ride turns, and then just continue to snowball. So that's why Thegria is definitely a very strong deck. Next we have Magnolia. So with grade 3 Magnolia, they now have, I'm pretty sure, a card that allows you to counter charge and soul charge, I believe it was as well. But the other thing that's really strong for Magnolia is that they got a card that allows you to get the Persona Ride power also to the back row. So Magnolia was fairly aggressive already. It was able to can potentially aggro from grade 2 and then get consistent multi-attacks on grade 3. But yeah, when you get to that break ride turn, especially when you have stuff like Junozilla, be able to transfer and stuff power 2, and Brag being able to restrict you from using certain cards, and again being able to give the Persona Rare power to the back row. This deck gets very scary. It gets very scary very fast. Like if you continuously Persona Ride every turn, you're always getting 6 attacks, 6 strong attacks. And again with Genozla, you can make those attacks bigger, and then yeah, as I said with Grabeg too, this deck can honestly blow you out of the water. Like this is definitely a deck not to this is definitely a deck you need to be careful of. This deck is strong. It's a very strong deck. Like the grade 3 Magnolia kind of build is very viable, especially with the set 7 stuff. So that's why I feel like Adawgz is definitely a strong deck. Next we have Laura Norel. So Laura Norel again, it has, you know, fairly consistent multi-attacks when you get to later stages of the game. It has a guard con on the Vanguard circle, which the opponent can't guard with unless you have a elementary sanctitude. If you don't, you could potentially be screwed, especially if you're on like 4 to 5 damage, because again, when you're on 4 damage, if they rebel crit, you die. They can also kind of rush as well a little bit, straight from grade 2, and then you have, you know, the triple, I think it's the grade 2, I think it's triple rare as well, allows you to draw multiple cards as well, so you can actually make a fairly big hand too. Again, the different songs they can play as well are making it very consistent. You can give Laura a crit with a certain one, you can restand with another one as well, and then I believe one of the other songs added a draw one too. So this deck can be very fast, especially if it's going first too. Once it kind of gets that guard con thing going as well, that deck essentially can snowball pretty hard. So that's why I put Monorail in the strong category. Next we have the good decks. So these decks are, you know, they're good. They're fast as well, but I don't think they can do it as well, I believe, as some of the other strong decks. But again, it doesn't mean they're bad by any means. I still think they're a fairly good deck to play too. So first of all, we do have Bavsagara. So Bavsagara being able to nuke the opponent's front row, gain a crit, have very big columns, especially with Trick Moon too. Overall, just very good. It has shield for kind of like extra shield value. It's definitely a nice deck overall, especially if you open your spear, being able to instantly get to the 2 arms, so you can just go ham straight from the get-go. As I said, if you get your arms and stuff, like you get everything, like everything opens, you know, you get your Trick Moons, you get your arms and stuff all ready to go. This deck has definitely the potential to take out all the decks above it. It can do that very well, but again, you need to make sure you can open all these pieces, and if you do, yeah, that can honestly start. It honestly can just start doing a lot of damage very, very quickly, and it can hit high numbers very, very quickly, and it's also quite tanky too. If you're playing properly, conservatively and stuff with your deck too, you can definitely draw a lot. Yeah, just honestly a solid deck overall. So that's why Bavsagara is in the good category. Next we have Zeus. Now I don't think probably anyone but maybe myself is tested Zeus. So Zeus, the way it works is that if you go second, you rush straight from grade 1. And then on grade 2, you create 30 to 40k columns, and then on grade 3, you make 40 to 45 40 to 45 columns in grade 3. Now you can do all this very consistently, but the only problem with this deck is that it is extremely fragile. So if you start swinging at its regards, and the Zeus player does not have excess cards to expand with to guard those its regards, then the deck starts to fall off and it starts to get put in a bad spot. But if everything does go for it, going well, and you know the opponent does swing at the regards and swing at the vanguards, give them all the damage they want in the world, this deck will shred every single deck above it. I generally mean that it will shred every single deck above it. But again, it has to have everything that aligns for it. So yeah, it's definitely a good deck. So that's why it's a good category. Next we have Hexerorb. So I've been playing a lot of Hexerorb. Hexerorb definitely feels good. It it can manipulate triggers and stuff as well. It has a strong early game too. If you open the Quadracast and Esonono, definitely good. But again, you have to make sure you kind of open those in early game to really get the game rolling. And then the problem as well, because it's a deck that is based on luck. If you're unlucky, or you maybe draw a lot of your triggers and stuff, then the deck kind of starts to fall off a little bit. It starts to not work as well as it should. And then also you need to see a Persona ride for this deck. If you don't see a Persona ride for this deck, it starts to fall off, unfortunately, and it'll just kind of flops over and dies, because you just can't, compared to like kind of the other decks in the good category, it kind of just, yeah, it just becomes very bad. So that's why it's good. Now, as I said, by no means, as I said, I play Hexerorb myself. I play tons of it. When everything goes well for you, you can legitimately shred every deck above it. I assure you, it can shred every deck above it. So that's why it's also a very good deck. So just definitely keep that in mind as well. Next we have Leonorn. So in set 7, Leonorn did get a Regard that is in form of a Restander, the Restander Regard 2. So Leonorn has triple drive. I was running the Roll Ride line in Leonorn itself, just being able to get some early game, because with Leonorn, I feel like if you haven't put in enough damage in the early game, then most of the time the opponent doesn't mind taking Leonorn, the Vanguard. It's been sometimes a couple of times. And the problem with Leonorn as well, I still feel like, even though it has multi-attacks, it is great. It is very good, don't get me wrong. But if you don't reveal triggers from your triple drives and stuff, then sometimes the reguards might not be too big, and they might be a little bit easy to guard. Now, if you do get triggers though, then this deck again can shred. It can shred. It can shred a lot of decks. It can shred a lot of the decks above it fairly well. Again, if the stars align. So again, you have your grade 3 again, which you can stand a regard as well. Again, and if you swing a Vic Leonorn, they have a PG, and you start ripping crits and other triggers to make a regard big that you want to restand, then yeah, it'll definitely get very scary very quickly. So it's because of that, Leonorn is definitely a good deck. Next we have we have Overlord. So Overlord's definitely a good deck too. I think we're getting the promo soon. I could be wrong. The promo definitely helps out a lot, but we don't have it yet near in set 7. So Overlord's definitely fairly good too. It can rush. It gets depending what you open. Then you have the normal Overlord being able to swing at regards. You could potentially damage deny if you need to with Overlord too. You can just kind of swing at both regards if you need to. If you don't want to give some of the decks above you any damage, because maybe giving them the damage can really hinder your gameplay. Or maybe you will swing at the Vanguard if you reveal some triggers and stuff. You definitely can have some decent powered regards too, depending what kind of triggers and stuff you reveal for it too, so you can kind of make the regards threatening as well. But it definitely, when that promo comes out in set 7, it definitely helps the deck, just not having to constantly kind of discard 2 cards essentially all the time for your Overlord skill and the end. So when that comes out, it definitely helps a lot. Again, that promo, when you discard it, you get to call it. And it's just it counts as the whole discard, which is great. I reckon when we did get that promo, I think it'd definitely be in the strong category. Yeah, 100%. And I guess we'll see what kind of support that Overlord might get in the. We'll see what kind of support it might get in set 8, if it does get any. Next we have Java. So Java, it can rush in the early game with your, if you get some prayer dragons, you know, again the call as well, maybe some other cards you can call too. Now the problems I've kind of seen with Java is that you confirm the Trickstar, which is good, but I'm thinking with the grade 2, if you can potentially whiff sometimes with front of prayer dragon, because it's top 7 for a prayer dragon. It doesn't guarantee you a prayer dragon, so that's a little bit of an inconsistency to start off with. Now Java does do multi attacks, but the problem is if you don't open the right crossover dressed units, you kind of have some smaller-ish crossover dress regards. So pretty much the crossover dress unit definitely you want to see kind of in the early game is the Bram Rainer. The Bram puts in so much work. Once you get that Bram, instead of it hits, you start mowing down the opponent's field. It gets scary. And then you also have the other grade 3, I can't remember his name, but he's very solid as well. Again, being able to get drive checks and stuff too, being able to Soul Blast 2 and pop regards as well. So they're very strong. But again, you need to make sure that you can get a prayer dragon. If you don't get a prayer dragon, then the deck kind of doesn't work at all. And again, the problem as well is that the Vanguard doesn't get any power. It's only 13. So if the opponent just decides to take a regard and get a trigger, it's 13 potentially to a 23 or 13 to a 10. So all you need to do is put a 15 down, and that's pretty much a no pass or an OT. So it's because of that as well. I definitely put Java in the good category because it does have a couple of downsides for it, but I feel like it's still a good deck. Don't get me wrong, I still think it's really good. Just compared to some of the other decks, I feel like it isn't there with them yet. Now it could potentially get later on. They could potentially get to that level, like kind of like Maha, but we'll see how that goes. Next we have Greedon. So Greedon's definitely an interesting one. So with the promo that came out, you want to aim to obviously get free Vanguard attacks. And getting free Vanguard attacks is definitely very strong. Especially if you've been put to, if you've been like taking a lot of damage, you know, so you have your Boshokus and stuff going too. Once you get those free Vanguard swings, it's definitely very scary of the opponent, especially if they don't have any PGs. Now, the problem that with Greedon at the moment is that, okay, with the promo for it to work, you need to have another copy of itself in your soul. So you need to obtain multiple copies of the grade 1 to get your triple Vanguard attacks with Greedon off. Then you also need to open cards like, I can't remember, it's the rabbit, I think it's like kind of must want to put in the soul. I think you can call the card from your hand, but you definitely need to open that as well, because they can help you kind of set up the triple Greedon play as well. Now, you don't have to go for the triple Vanguard attack with Greedon as well. You can also just do a couple attacks and like make a front row for your regards. But again, the only problem with Greedon is that it kind of falls in the same thing as Leonon, where you need to reveal triggers for it to start being scary. So again, if you don't reveal much triggers on your first swing, potentially the opponent can just guard the second one. Again, if you're not lucky enough to hit triggers, and yeah, it can just kind of fall out of your favor very quickly. Now, another problem with Greedon is deck out, because it goes through its deck very quickly, and when it does go through its deck very quickly, there might be in some scenarios where you might only have to swing with regards because your deck is so low, or if you run draws, you have potential hitting a draw that maybe the Vanguard isn't worth swinging with. It's very sad, but in saying that though, I feel Ingridion's definitely still a good deck. You just need to open the right pieces pretty much for it, and just hit triggers pretty much. If you can do that, open the right pieces and hit trigger, the deck's gold. You go in file Ingridion. Next we have is I can't remember its name, so I'll just call it the magazine deck. So the magazine's deck's good, being able to give units power. I think draw as well. I think it's like draw 2.1 back and stuff as well. It also does have some a couple of, I think it's like a restand in the deck too for the reguards. It's definitely good. Definitely you need to draw multiple pieces for it, but if you do draw your pieces and stuff, you get your magazines, you get your restanding reguards, the deck just starts to roll. But if you don't draw those, you start to brick. It kind of as well, you start hitting your triggers and stuff, the deck kind of just starts to fall off. So it's because of that. I feel like the magazine's definitely a good deck. I definitely wouldn't say it's okay. I definitely say it's good. So that's why I put it in the good category. And again, I think it's a deck as well where if you get some more support, I feel like it could be a lot better. Next we have Roroa. So Roroa, the new promo, it allows you to make bigger plant tokens, which is very nice, as I'm pretty sure the Momoke gains power for each Momoke. So Momoke gains, I think, power for each Momoke, I think 5k. But the good thing about it as well is that because the tokens hit bigger numbers, sometimes you can have like a decent amount of board with tokens swinging for 20k and stuff as well. The problem with Roroa, though, is it's quite fragile. Your aim with the deck is to aggro very quickly, so that you can kill the opponent very quickly. So usually, once you've done your Persona Ride turn, if you haven't killed by then, you're kind of in a bad spot. Now, but what I did like about the promo as well is that the promo can also search you your glitter partner, which makes the deck a little more consistent too. So that consistency definitely helped Roller a lot. That's why I think it's a good deck. And again, I think with the support it's getting in set 8, I think it definitely helps push the deck further again. It can aggro, but it can just help it aggro more. So definitely a very solid card. We just have to wait for it to get in set 8. Also, I should mention as well is that, yeah, with the Momokes and the Raidalina, they can also be very scary too in the early game if you're going first too, as you can have, I think, like maybe like a 25k, I think a 20k Momoke, and then you have like a 35 or 30k Raidalina, which again is nothing to sniff about. So definitely keep an eye on those decks. They're they're also very solid too. So okay, the next we go into the okay deck. So these decks are okay. With these decks, I feel like definitely the stars definitely need to align, and you need to fucking sack. If you can sack, I think you're doing well. Now, the reason why I say this, okay, so the heroes are very good. We'll go with heroes first, since talking about heroes. So heroes are very good. It's you don't really have much wiggle room to aggro with the deck, because you kind of want to save everything for the Persona Ride turn. Now, unfortunately, its Persona Ride turn isn't as great as what other decks would do for their Persona Ride turns. You do 4 attacks, that's nice. You do have the bases as well that give you some extra defense, that is nice too. But you can't keep on the constant defense and pressure compared to some other decks as time progresses. Now, I'm not saying that heroes are a bad deck by any means. Hero is definitely really good. If you can sack, it definitely helps the deck a lot more, because you can make some nice bigger numbers with the deck. Just if you can hit a crit, maybe not in front, obviously, maybe draws and stuff as well. You just need to start seeing some triggers. Getting some triggers definitely helps the deck a lot. compared to some of the decks higher, where triggers aren't exactly, you don't need to rely on triggers as much. The okay decks definitely need to rely on having a little bit of luck. So if you aren't that lucky, it can be a bit of a problem. Again, the problem I see with the heroes as well is that it only gets a crit once you have your third base, and the deck has been hidden because you can't search for a base off your base. So you're also forced to hopefully draw into multiple bases. Otherwise, you might just be stuck with one base for the game. It has happened a couple of times. And when you're stuck with one base and you got Persona right and things don't start rolling, you flop over and die, unfortunately. You want to make sure you open a couple of bases so you can actually, use your base multiple times with guarding and stuff as well. So that's kind of a problem that the deck has too. So if they give the deck anything to help that make it more consistent, I think the deck will be solid. What you can run though, if you want to, I did test, was you can run Combine Rusher. It's definitely a very strong card to run on deck if you want to as well. As I said, if you just did Combo Rusher, you play your base, you just count on and call the Combo Rusher out, and again that'll be a nice 20k attacker by itself. So that's definitely solid. Again, Persona right 30k too, so that's an option. Next we have is MLB. So MLB does increase its base power by 2, making it 15, which is nice. I can't remember against Triple Drive. I can't remember against Crit as well, but the deck does have a bit of an early game, but then when you kind of get to grade 3, you're hoping to sack. Unfortunately, it's true. You're hoping to sack to do well with MLB. As again, MLB has to suck a Blast of Dark and Blast a Blade of Believe in the Soul to start getting its skills to proc off. I feel like the deck needs more support. It's definitely a fun deck to play. Don't get me wrong. It might have some potential. Maybe depending how you build it to maybe contest against all the other decks. But unfortunately, I think the deck's okay, and it unfortunately does need more support. Next, we have Chaos. So Chaos is definitely okay. If you get your hands on a promo, I think Chaos goes from okay to being good, honestly. I think Chaos is definitely a good deck. But you definitely need the promo to definitely make Chaos good. So that's why I put Chaos here, because the promos might be a little bit hard to get. So that's why I've put Chaos there. I guess technically I should put it in good anyways. Yes, so Chaos is in good. Chaos is in a good spot. Because that promo definitely helps with filtering, which is nice. Again, because you'll be able to look at top 5, you can put cards in the soul. And then you have a couple of set 7 cards which help as well. Things like grade 3, I think it's like, I can't remember what it does. I know it was a good card. But it was a good support card for it's a good card for Chaos. And then I believe we got I think it might just be that. I think there might be a couple of cards in set 7 as well, but I think a couple of cards that can support Chaos in set 7 actually helps them make it a little bit better too. But yeah, the promo definitely does so much. Again, being able to call it Makani, being able to essentially soul charge 4, if you're lucky, and then Chaos being able to remove 3 cards from your deck, pretty much being able to call 1, soul charge 1, add 1 to hand. It's definitely nice too. Yeah, it's definitely good. The promo helps a lot. As said, even though it runs a lot of one-offs, it feels it kind of has some fair consistency. I think it honestly just depends on how you build Chaos to make it consistent. Now, there have been builds that run a lot of copies of everything. Now, that's definitely fine, but I feel like running a lot of one-offs makes the deck more consistent. And again, there are a lot of cards that kind of almost do the same thing as other cards as well. So I just can't justify when I see some Chaos decks when they run a lot of copies of everything that they just don't run one-offs when it can make the deck more consistent. Now, as I said, if that was work for them, as I said, there's nothing wrong with that. As I said, if running multiple cards for everything works for the deck, that's good. I just feel that running a lot of one-offs in a deck just makes it even more consistent. So that's why I think, yeah, Chaos is actually a good deck. So what we'll do, we'll move this little man up here. Hey, bro, you can go next to Aurora. Actually, oh, yeah, you're next one. And the sad little man down here. We have the CEO. Now, he's definitely very slow. I think he definitely will have trouble trying to compete against the powerful decks. As I said, he only starts popping off once you have everything set up for the deck itself. So for example, pretty much, I'm pretty sure the max grade 3 or something, I think sometimes you can set it like one turn earlier, which is cool. But I definitely feel like even though the deck got so much support in set 7, I feel like it's still missing quite a lot. It pretty much needs more ways to kind of accelerate your orders much quicker. You want to be able to operate it much quicker too. You know what I mean? Like, you can only properly operate your orders when you hit to grade 3 with Welstra. You need some bigger, stronger payoff for Welstra. I feel like that's what it's lacking. If you can give it some better orders that it can operate, that makes it better, it can definitely do well. I feel like, okay, even though I think this deck's in a bad spot right now, I feel like kind of like how Azulga was like, I feel like if it gives it better orders, the deck could potentially skyrocket higher up the tier list. As said, all it might need is just like one really good order that they can operate, and I feel like the deck can potentially just do extremely well. But until that day comes, unfortunately, I feel like it's going to be in a bad spot, which is why it's in the sad category. And then with everything else, I'm unsure. You can guys let me down in the comments down below. Alright, so thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you do, please make sure to leave a like. And while you're down there, why not subscribe? And hit the notification bell so that when I upload another video, you will be notified. Adawgz out. See ya.